this talk will be highly subjective because you can't really do a list like this in any way possible, because you wouldn't also know what kind of metrics would actually go on, etc. So this is a list I've done on what knowledge based on me and knowledge based on others, and it will be mostly in alphabetic order. So also because just choosing 50 startups is hard, doing that in some kind of way, in some order, is even harder. So it will be alphabetic order most of the things, and it's from my work I've done with Horizon startups and just people I know in one way or another. That's that to say about that. I'm just thinking what more. We'll be focused mostly on funding because that's the easiest metrics. The best metrics to use would actually be like number of employees, because that actually tells you the most about how it's going for a startup or not. But that information isn't really readily available, and it changes. So funding is the second best to go on. And funding is relevant not at too early level always, but especially on a later level. So I did this piece almost 2 years ago now, where I looked at funding in the Nordics, different startups, and I wrote a rather long article about how it works. And the interesting thing with funding is that like you have different stages of funding. And when we talk about funding, we usually mix all of these together. So we don't really focus on late stage funding versus early stage funding, for example. So if you have early stage funding, you often talk about angel investment or seed investment, and that's often quite low amounts. So most of the money we will talk here will be mostly euro or dollars. So I try not to confuse it with Swedish kroner, because this 1-0 difference will make it very confusing in that sense. But usually, like when you talk an angel investment, you talk maybe tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's size here very early. Whilst later stages, so-called Series A or Series B, they have these strange names because most of the way it works with funding a startup comes from the US, and there they have an official paper which is called like the Series A investment paper. That's why they call it Series A, and then they just continue with B, C, D, etc. They're often quite high. So here we're talking about millions of dollars most of the time, or even tens of millions of dollars. So it's a lot of money, and there's a lot of difference between getting small early investment money and getting later stage large money. And you can definitely start a company without funding. A lot of companies don't need these early fundings at all, but there's very few who can manage to grow big and international without the later stage funding. So from that perspective, looking at funding actually tells you a lot, even if maybe the first 5 or even 10 years of the startup were without any funding at all. If you want to scale and really grow large, you almost always take in money. We'll look actually on some of them on the list who haven't done that, but almost all have in one way or another. So that's important to understand how funding works in general. If this is interesting for you and you want to learn more, you can check out the website horizonstartups.com, and you can go to this link here, and there's a long piece of information with examples. How does it actually work? How much money do you raise early? How much money do you raise later? At what stage is a startup when you raise the different amounts of money? So that's the easiest way to find it. Okay, so as I said, it will be 50 startups. We will go through them rather quickly, because if we have about 40 minutes and it's about 50 startups, it's less than a minute for each startup. And I've already talked for a while, so it'll be probably less around 30 seconds a startup. And some will take a little bit longer, some will be shorter. And we will go through them in different categories. And in those categories, there will be an alphabetic order. So I think it's 3 categories in alphabetic order in those categories. They're using my knowledge, and they're used very, very much on Crunchbase, which is a quite good database. It's a public wiki sort of database for startups. And that's kind of up to date on most of them at least. So it's a combination. Okay, we start big. So we start with the larger startups. Those are the ones raised more than 10 million euro. Okay. So if you raised above that amount, and then okay, so startup, what is a startup in this sense? And there's no good definition of startup. So when we talk about startups in this talk here, we'll mostly focus on tech. So it's like hardware, software, some kind of technology. Rather young companies. That means very few of them are older than 10 years. Most are younger than 10 years. but there will be some exceptions as well. So that's like the definition. And the main thing regarding to startup is that they want to grow. Their ambition is to become larger. That's like the definition. So it's not a freelancer. It's always a team or people want to grow something. So the largest one raised more than 10 million. If you raised this much money, you're probably like at the low end 30 employees, at the high end maybe 100, 200, or even like 300 employees. So you're a rather large company in some respects, and you've probably been going on for like at least 5 years, probably like 8, 10 years, something like that. Okay, alphabetic order. Falcon is one of them. So Falcon, it's previously known as Falcon Social, now they're Falcon IO, social media monitoring tools, Copenhagen-based. We have Flatfrog in Lund, technology for multi-touch computing, screens, big screens, small screens, bigger screens mostly. Quite a lot of total funding with up to $60 million. Glow, also Lund-based, research-heavy, works with LEDs, and now it's a very research-heavy startup. In River, it's a business-to-business startup which does like PIM, product information management systems for e-commerce. So it's like nobody really knows about nobody knows about it unless you work there, more or less, or you work very detailed in e-commerce. Malmö-based. Plan Day works with employee schedule systems. So making sure that if you run a restaurant or a coffee shop chain or something like that, that you can manage your employees in an efficient way. Also raised, 70 million so far. Copenhagen-based. Solvoltaics, another Lund-based, also research-heavy, is in the solar energy field. And Tradeshift works with also very unsexy things. Such as information management between different like administrative tools, like if you like revenue management tools or accounting tools, and like the information management between those. And Trustpilot, which is probably the only one of these, which are the biggest ones, which you actually know. How many here know about Trustpilot? Yeah, so Trustpilot works with review system for products online, mostly on focus on e-commerce in that sense. Also raised quite a lot of money, so they're over 100 million, going very well for them. And Unity, how many here know Unity? I'm guessing a couple of you have probably seen the symbol. It's a tool for mobile or for 3D. And has been going very well because the mobile gaming has more or less exploded. So a lot of mobile games are built with Unity in one way or another. I think there are over 2 billion smartphones has an app which uses Unity in one way or another on them. So there's very large. And Vivino, I don't know if anybody of you know this. Yeah, some. It's a lot bigger elsewhere. In Sweden, it's not the biggest because one of the ways to earn money with this is actually to sell wine, which is kind of hard in Sweden. So it's an app you use to scan a bottle of wine, and it will tell you how good this wine is. And you can also scan, like a restaurant menu of wine, and it will tell you which wine is the best and which wine is the most, how much does it usually cost in that sense. So it's a consumer product, a wine app. Okay. So these were the 10 largest. And as you see, there's two exceptions. I'll talk about them. They raised a lot of money, but they're no longer headquartered in this region. So that's also something which has happened a lot more before, but now it's actually not that big anymore. So we have Neo Technology, originally from Malmö. They still have a lot of development here as well. So they're still present in the region, but they're no longer headquartered here. And we have Realm, which also has a lot of but they have strong presence in Copenhagen, but they're also based in California now. And as you see with the startups I've been going through so far, is that there's a lot of them which are in, most startups are unknown to outsiders. And that's because a lot of them are in niche markets. So there's very few business to consumer startups. Most startups are business to business or in some niche market, which makes them kind of unknown unless you are in that market. Okay, So those were the largest. Now we go to larger, which I've roughly raised more than 5 million euros in funding. Doesn't have to be. There'll be some exceptions as well. And as last time, alphabetic order. Okay, auto butler. Repair service information. If I want to repair my car, where do I find that? Copenhagen-based, but present in all Nordic countries, I think. Bounty, deal aggregation site, so like Groupon or Let's Deal aggregation. Recently closed a new round, so it's going well for them. The deal business has been kind of up and down last 2-3 years, I would say. Collego, a way to find services, especially like on the either business to business or like somebody to repair, if you need somebody to repair your house or a plumber or something like that. So a site to find those kind of services. Also going very well for them. Crunchfish, based here, I think. Touchless technology. And so they work with technologies that lets you interact with computer or mostly phone without touching it. So it's very research or technology-driven startup. Also raised quite a lot of money so far. Driver, you started out as Klicka Taxi. It's now called Driver. It's sort of it's a competitor to Uber, but instead of starting their own companies or starting their own taxi companies, which Uber does, or they don't really start a taxi company, that's why they get into so much legal troubles. Driver is software for taxi companies, so that you can actually build a service similar to Uber, but you work with existing taxi companies instead of starting your own. Firma Phone, it's you could call a smart telephone service for businesses. Copenhagen-based. Flygstolen, one of the exceptions. They haven't raised money in that sense, but they're quite large now. I think they have a revenue of over 150 million euros a year, so that's rather a lot. Helsingborg-based, but also, as you see here, been around for quite a long time. And that's typically something you see. So if you don't raise money and you grow large, it takes you a lot longer time. So it's definitely possible. It's just that it's a question of how quick you want to scale. Game analytics, similar to Unity, has had a large advantage of gaming industry booming. So analytics tool for games. Mapillary, just crowdsourced street view. So you use your phone to take pictures, and that's more or less combined into a sort of street view as a competitor to Google Street View. How many here know about Mapillary? Yeah, good. I was expecting quite a lot. Good. Minto, online fashion retail marketplace. So it's big in the online sector. Orbital Systems. How many here know about Orbital Systems? Yeah, also one of the more famous ones in that sense. Niklas Sennström is one of the advisors and investors nowadays as well. TrialB works with software for clinical trials. Lund-based, also niched in that sense. And 23 works with videos, you could say it's kind of a white label solution, like a white label YouTube. So if you have a service and you work a lot with video in one way or another, you can have your own video portal through them, you could say. It's kind of probably they would get mad if I told that, but it's kind of the essence. And Subblocks. Smart way to unlock doors using the phone, mostly aimed at consumers and I think hotels and stuff like that. Lund-based. Okay, so now we're halfway through. So now we have growing startups. Younger startups most of them have raised money, so they still raised roughly more than 2 million. That still means that they're like a team of 10, maybe 20 people working on it. It doesn't have to be. Could also be maybe between 5 and 20 people, depending on what they do on the team. So still, and most of these have like some kind of either strong promise, like they're working on really cool technology, or they've come quite long in like finding their customers in a good way. So they've going somewhere and they've convinced investors that they're on the right track to do more. So a lot of these companies here will probably grow more. Some will die, or not manage. Airtime works with transferring this kind of video presentation without using any cables. So similar to Chromecast or Apple TV's technology, but it's not limited to Chrome and not limited to Apple, so it's open for everybody. They managed to do, I think, one of the largest crowdfunding for a Nordic country. They raised over $1 million in their crowdfunding campaign, which is quite a good job. Anyfi Networks, Wi-Fi solutions. Lund-based Biletto is an Eventbrite competitor, you could say, focusing on both making it easy to manage events, but also to find interesting events. Church Desk, how many here know about Church Desk? Nobody, that's strange. So that's a management tool for churches. Apparently there's a huge industry. There are a lot of churches in the world, and they all need quite a lot of management. Things like who are members, who has a wedding and stuff like that. So it's going very well for them. Code Sealers, IT security company. Conferize, anybody here heard about Conferize? That's an event, also in the event business or conference business. So they find all events that there are, or all conferences there are in the entire world, and puts them in a database and kind of create a website for each conference that there is. So also you can book tickets to them. You can most of the time watch, if they have recorded videos from them, you can often watch them there and stuff like that. You can find out who's been going to the conference and stuff like that. Very interesting model. Deskwolf's similar area as as Falcon.io, so social media management and optimization. Edement is in the education, is like what do you call it? Digital education business. Flatter has been around for some time, and recently changed a little bit what they want to do. So now called Flatter Plus. Flatter started out as micropayments. So you had a Flatter button on your website, and with that button, you instead of just liking, you actually donated money to the website if you had registered your Flatter account. And now they're working with, I think, trying to find an alternative to ad blockers, like a revenue model for online is kind of what they want to do. I've actually not completely, I don't really know what the new service is. Graduate Land. How many know about Graduate Land? Yeah, almost, or a lot of people have used it. They power most of the universities' job sites in one way or another. So Malmö Högskola, Lund University, Copenhagen Business School, if you ever applied to a job through their platform, that's Graduate Land's platform. Go More is car sharing, peer-to-peer. So if you want to go rent a car instead of renting a car, you can use Go More to rent out your car to others, for example. Icon Finder. It's a marketplace to find icons, very simple. So either you can buy icons one-on-one, or you can buy a flat rate to buy unlimited amount of icons. Or you're a designer and you want people to use your icons, you can sell your icons through here. Linkfire works in the music industry, trying to get people to, okay, if I hear a song and I want to play it on my device, I might no longer use MP3, I might use Spotify or Apple Music or something like that. And this is a way for me, it doesn't matter where this music is, I will be able to find where the music is. So, and music discovery is quite a big business because people want to use your service. So it's interesting in that perspective. Modcam, Lund-based, intelligent computer vision. Pecan, it's a sort of a management tool to help companies grow. It's kind of undercover, still not undercover, but it's still fairly new. Raised a lot of money for being started last year. So they raised 4 million and started last year, but that's because the people behind Pecan are from some very successful startups. So they have a lot of good connections. So we'll probably hear a lot more about those. It's similar to Mapillary. There's serial entrepreneurs behind it, so it will probably go quite quick. PinMe2, just recently were in the news about wanting to raise more money as well. They do social location-based management on social networks like Facebook. If you have multiple locations, that's a big problem, because if you have one location, it's quite easy to manage it on Facebook yourself or on Google Places or whatever. But if you have like 100 locations all over Sweden, that's actually quite problematic to manage. So that's kind of what they're focusing on. Simple site, as the title says, it's a web tool to create simple websites. Competitors in Sweden are, for example, Hemsida 24. International competitors are Wix.com. Goes very well for them because they realized how they could scale the business. So now it's very easy to attract new users and to turn those into paying customers. So once you find that, it can quite quickly scale quite large. Smart refill. Is a smart technology for buying things with your mobile in that sense. They actually do other things as well, but this is a main product of that company. Templafy is also this niche business-to-business project. So Templafy works with exactly one-stop template management for any office platform. So that means that if you're a large company, you actually get into troubles by having like, okay, wait, we should do a brief or we should do something. How should it look? So you actually need a lot of templates and things like Word or Excel, etc. And this is actually a big hassle to manage. So they actually have a tool to manage templates for larger corporations, which apparently also is a large business. Okay, so those were like the larger one, growing ones. And I'll have the final ones here just to show some more inspiration. So we have, what I want to say with this is that there's startups in all kind of different areas. So there's not like one area where this region is big, it's everywhere. So we have things like Swiftcord, which works with what you call legal tech, making legal system, using technology to make the legal system quicker or to manage things which just are time consuming in the legal system right now. We have Bilprospect, which works with sales tools for cars. We have Coinify, which works with Bitcoin. We have Myoinix, which works with the smart mouses and game accessories. Qit, which works with online queuing. So if a lot of people visit your website, you'll actually get a queue number instead of the website going down. There's also EasySize, which works with getting a better fit for clothes you buy online. Equip, anybody know Equip? No, so this is a leading technology for horse racing. So all horse racing in the world use Equip's technology, based here in the region. Yeah, but nobody knows, because if you don't organize horse tournaments, you probably haven't heard about it. So it's all these kind of things which are here. Interesting to know also, often when you talk about startup, you talk about a startup ecosystem or something like that. And what this all boils down to, more or less, is companies being started, companies growing, either developing their product or developing their market, like seeing where they fit, as a so-called product market fit. If they want to do that very quickly, they raise money from angels initially. If they want to do that in their own pace, or if they already have money and have time to spend on it, they do it without raising money. Once they find their product market fit, they'll quite often either scale by themselves or raise money to scale even quicker. That's what we've seen before. And then you talk about exit. So once you've come to a certain length of your journey, you often do an exit. And that exit can be in different things. So one is that you don't do an exit. You actually continue to grow your business globally and international. That's one way so you actually don't need to do it. But if you choose that path, you quite often do a listing. So you quite often go public. You go to the stock market, either in Stockholm or in New York or London, for example. And so you list your company public, and that's something you want to do in order to get the investors. They want their money back sooner or later. They can't wait till forever, or most don't wait till forever. So they want to get their money back. So by listing your company on the stock exchange, people can buy shares, and then they can sell their shares eventually when they see fit. So that's one way to do a like long run exit. And the other is that once you've grown your company to a certain size, one of the bigger companies comes and buys you. so they acquire you. So either because you have a really competent team and they want to develop your technology further, or because you have really interesting customers which they want to get their hands on, or because they're looking at becoming a big player in this market where you're already sort of a big player and they want to acquire you because that's the easiest way for them to do it instead of them starting a competitor in that sense. So, and those kind of exits are really important because what they do is that every time such an exit happens, two things occur. One is that the entrepreneurs quite often get quite a lot of money for the years they spent building this company. So you have people becoming quite rich, which is very important. And the other is that these entrepreneurs, after when you do an exit, you might have a lock-in. You might have a lock-in in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years that you need to stay with the company because they want your knowledge or they want the team. So you actually need to stay there. It's not always like that, but quite often. But after that time, you're free. That means that you've done this journey. You've built a company from scratch to becoming a big team on a global market. And you quite often want to do it again in one way or another. And these two combined together often creates business angels. So you often invest in new startups or new teams. And business angels sometimes only invest. They only invest their money and their knowledge. But sometimes they instead start new companies. As we've seen, Mapillary, Pecan. So those are people who've already managed to do very well before starting again. Just because that's what they know how to do. They like this. They think it's fun to start businesses. So it's really important for the entire ecosystem with all these exits that happens. So just some recent ones. Expert Maker acquired by eBay, Hitta Hem acquired by Bonnier, Atosho acquired by Pretty Social, Octoshape acquired by Akaimi. So all these, and as before, yeah, you probably haven't heard about the startups either because they're, as everything else, is quite niche and most of them are business to business. Hitta Hem you might have heard of. But also some startups don't make it, and that's also important to know. So of all the startups we've gone through, the ones on the list here, I would say a lot of them are quite, I would say 75% will do very well of those. 25% will not. And as the famous saying with marketing money, yeah, you don't know which ones. It's very hard to predict in that sense. So a lot of startups also fail. Often startups fail early. So they fail, they have an idea, they work with that idea for 1 or 2 years, but they never really find the product market fit. They never really find a way to scale. And then they quit or fail early. But sometimes, especially if you raise money, you fail later because you have more money, so you can try for longer. But it also will hurt more when you fail because you have external investors. So it's more a relationship management. There are more people who get angry or mad if you fail badly. So you want to make sure that they're happy even through you failing. But it's very important to accept that failing is a part of it. And most of the people who start successful companies have tried a lot of different things before and failed at those. So it's very seldom a person starts their first company and has become successful. That's almost, I would say it's maybe 1 in 100. So the 99 of the rest, they've done other companies before. Maybe they haven't raised money, or maybe it's just been a hobby project which grew and then eventually they realized it never would work in the long run. But they've done something before. So failing at the start is very good because it helps build your expertise in how to do it in the next time. So some recent failures we have Ovigo, which hasn't quit as a company, still exists, but Sophia has moved on. We have News Hobby, which actually filed for bankruptcy. We have FitBay, which also filed for bankruptcy. And just yesterday, we had Brisk, which has said they will close down the company. And this also shows different scales. So FitBay has come a long way. Brisk also Brisk has raised $2 million. So they were on Monday. Brisk were on this list. Today they aren't on this list anymore. So it can move rather quickly in that sense, and it can be hard to predict because startups have, of course, an incentive to not tell everybody. Oh, by the way, we are unsure if we will last, because you never want to say that to anybody, because then you will lose customers and then you will fail. So startups are always risky. They can die anytime. That's the point of it. So it's about believing in it all the way, which is important. Okay, I've done some, just a list of which VCs, venture capital firms, are investing here in this region. So just to give a taste for that. So there's some famous names here. For example, Atomico, that's Niklas Zennström's investment firm. Sequoia also quite North Zone and Coriandamol, the big ones in Sweden. Sunstone are big in the Danish base, also in the Nordics. But also, apart from that, very mixed. So Balderton is UK-based, Dawn Capital is Finland-based, for example. Fidelity Growth Partners is also London-based. So it's not only Swedish venture capitalist firms investing here, or not only Danish investing in Denmark. Most of the VCs invest in Nordics in that sense, unless they're government owned or something like that. So if you are North Zone, you will invest in Danish companies and the Swedish companies, and the Norwegian if you find any Norwegian companies. So it's quite spread out in that sense. And that's very good, because each time a company it's the same as if companies make an exit. Each time a company gets an investment, especially from a venture capitalist firm, that grows a connection. Because getting an investment in your company isn't about just calling a random phone number to one of these guys and say, "Hi, I have this company, would you like to invest?" Because that's not how it works. You need to build a relationship. Investment is often compared to marriage, because that's more or less what it is. So if you invest as a venture capitalist or even as a business angel in a startup, you expect to be part of that journey for 5-10 years, and it will have ups and downs. So it's a sort of marriage. And so you want to get to know each other first. You want to be able to see, can I trust this person? How is this person behaving, especially in business business areas? So from that perspective, you always want to know somebody. So for each VC investing in a startup here in this region, there's a new connection. So there's a new person who can vouch for others and say like, yeah, you should really check out these guys because they're doing something really cool. So those kind of things are really important. Or if I, as an entrepreneur, want to find VCs, I will ask my friends, I will ask other entrepreneurs, hi, who should I talk to? And they will tell you, I should talk to this guy, or yeah, talk to her over there, because they're doing a good job with being a good VCs. So it's all about connections. Okay, so to kind of wrap it up, just see if I'm kind of on time as well. That's good. So I did this talk actually 1 year ago. So compared to that, it was really fun to see. So conclusion number one, there's a lot happening in the startup scene. The startups have really grown. So last year when I did something similar, the ones who have raised a lot of money have more or less doubled since then. So that's a very good sign, because that means you don't start a company today and raise 10 million euros tomorrow. You start a company today and then you raise 10 million euros in 3 years if you work really fast. Most likely in 8 years, probably something like that. So it's a long journey. So just seeing companies mature from last year to this year is a really good sign. Also, a lot of the startups who were on this list last year are still there. That's also good, because that also means these startups are actually doing something which makes an impact and actually has a market validation in one way or another. People believe in the startup in one way or another. You see that a lot more startups have raised money, and it's also substantial. They haven't just raised the same amount, they've raised more money. That's very important. As you notice by all the examples I gave here, it's a business-to-business heavy region. So there's a lot of startups here focusing on working with the digital segment, but towards other companies in one way or another. Most of them towards corporations, or towards a niche segment of the market. And that's good, because I think that's one of the points why these startups can raise money and why these startups last. So because if you're business to business, you very quickly will find out if you have consumers or not. So if you have anybody who wants to buy your product or not. If you don't, you quite often quit. If you have, you're onto something, and then you're just about execution on that. Okay, trying to make that as big as possible. The drawback with having business to business as the biggest sector is that there are very few role models in this sense. So if you would compare this region with, for example, Stockholm or with Berlin, then in Stockholm you would have, for example, Spotify, or you would have Klarna, or in Berlin you would have SoundCloud, or you would have Zalando. And those are names which everybody knows. everybody knows about Zalando, everybody knows about Spotify because they're business to consumer. So they have an interest in being well known. Meanwhile, if you're business to business, you have no interest of being well known in the general public. Why would anybody care if you do some real technology in the general public in that sense? You will first have that interest if you go to the stock exchange and are publicly listed, because then you want to have investor relations with all the with everybody who wants to invest in on the stock market in that sense. But if you're growing and are privately funded startup in the business to business sector, you will quite often not make a lot of noise just because you don't have time for it. You will be focusing on actually building your product and actually scaling your customers. So from that perspective, there are few role models. So if I, as a student or as somebody who's new to entrepreneurship in general, want to look at, okay, who are the biggest ones? Yeah, you will most likely not find them because they are not that obvious. That's hence why I do this talk. So a lot of the startups here are unknown. And also interesting, Copenhagen is stronger than Skåne, but it's actually very, it's not that much of a difference. So there are, like on all the lists of the top 10, there were 4 from Skåne and 6 from Copenhagen. So the difference is smaller than you would imagine if you take into account that Copenhagen is actually a capital region from that perspective. Good, but it's also important to note, this is only like normal tech, if you want to say that, hardware or web or mobile. There are, apart from that, also biotech, clean tech, med tech. We have so much more in this region where we're also very strong. But that's not even what I've talked about here at all. So we should also have that. As a region, we're really strong in innovation and startups in general. Great. And with that, I want to say thank you.